Creativity and community are absolutely vital in challenging times. Welcome to Syncreate, a show where we explore the intersections between creativity, psychology, and spirituality. We believe everyone has the capacity to create. Our goal is to demystify the process and expand the boundaries of what it means to be creative. We talk with visionaries and change makers and everyday creatives working in a wide range of fields and media, from the arts to science, technology, and business. We aim to illuminate the creative process from imagination to innovation and everything in between. I'm Melinda Rothaus, and I help individuals and organizations bring their dreams and visions to life. At Syncreate, we're here to support your creative endeavors. So if you have an idea for a project or a new venture, whatever that might look like in whatever medium, and you're not quite sure how to get it off the ground, find us at syncreate.org. Our book, also called Syncreate, walks you through the stages of the creative process so you can take action on your goals. We also offer resources, creative process tools, and coaching to help you bring your work to the world, including a monthly creativity coaching group that happens on the fourth Sunday of each month. So you can find out more information on the website. We'd also love to hear from you, love your feedback on the show. If you have ideas for topics or guests that we might bring on, drop us a line at info@syncreate.org. My guest today is Brian Kirven. He's a poet, traveler, and teacher living in Point Reyes Station, California, north of San Francisco on the coast. He's the author of Shorelines, A Traveler Comes Home to the Tide Zone. He's also served as a California poet in the schools, as well as the Poetry Inside Out program. He also hosted a radio show on KWMR in Point Reyes. His poetry has been featured in numerous literary journals, including California Quarterly, Inverness Almanac, the Kerf, West Marin Review, and most recently, the Haight Ashbury Literary Journal. Well, welcome, Brian. I'm so delighted to have you on the podcast today.
Very delighted to be here with you.
Yes, I know we've been talking about doing this for a while. So glad to be able to have you on the show. And I was just out there visiting recently, seeing your beautiful neck of the woods. So that was a real treat, and just wanted to share a little bit about how we know each other. So we met at a retreat several years ago with the poet David Whyte in Ireland, which was kind of both a literary retreat, and also did some hiking and visited some very magical places. And then we ended up traveling together and have kept in touch since that time. I think, might even say we've acted as muses for each other to some extent, or inspired each other's work. So it's been just great to connect with you over time. And as I mentioned in the introduction, you're a poet, and you have a very strong connection to this area where you live, north of San Francisco, Point Reyes Station on the California coast. And your poetry really, I think, reflects this deep connection with nature and with a sense of place. And so love to hear just a little bit more about kind of what are the deep roots of inspiration for your work, your poetry, and your writing.
Well, yeah, the natural surroundings are probably first and foremost for sparking poems and just writing in a journal. Um, yeah, I see the surroundings of the beauty and not necessarily beauty, and as a mirror
Yes.
uh, or any words that might come out artistically, and it's I see my relation within those surroundings as uh, of it, not observing as much, not purely observing, but the goal is to really feel viscerally connected to the land. The language of the land comes out. I feel if I'm, you know, achieving that state of great achievement to become one with the soil.
Yes, beautiful. Yeah, there's a deep sense of interconnection, I think, in your work and a sense of presence. And so I know you spend a lot of time actually out in nature on the land, hiking and exploring. Do you actually write when you're in nature, or do you sort of experience it and then kind of come back and journal and write about it after the fact, or maybe both?
Yes, both. Yeah, I feel like having the journal along with on outings is essential,
Yeah.
and oftentimes the seed will be planted then, and I think I'll need to put down, or yeah, for lack of a better word, record the in the through line, the in way, which is a phrase or a word or a theme, to get it started. If I'm not going to sit down and write it there on the spot,
Yeah.
I'll at least have something that I can work with when I return to the desk or wherever I write in bed or you know I feel yeah, I feel pretty confident at that point that uh, really depends if I feel like the energy is fully there to lay it all out in one go,
Mhm.
or uh, I could hold that off and then trust in the energy to come later when I have more energy to give to it. Because I feel that poetry or any art needs 100% of your heart,
Mm.
in the moment of in the act of creating.
Yes, yes, definitely. And as we both know, energy can be finite at times. So, I
Yes,
I love what you kind of said about learning to trust the energy. And I think as creatives, part of our journey is about learning to trust ourselves and our own process and kind of what works for each of us, which is not a one size fits all kind of thing. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So how has that sort of evolved for you over the years? Did you start like writing poetry when you were really young, or was there a moment when you really started to kind of consider yourself a poet?
Um, when I was teenager, I scribbled down punk rock songs.
Yeah.
Would scream them in the garage with friends playing instruments. And yeah, so yeah, I mean, I guess that's poetry. That was poetry. Pretty atrocious at times, but it was attempting to find a rhythm, a
Yeah.
rhyme, or a rhythmic scheme. Um, and I guess, yeah, through high school, I would write for a zine that we put out. There was one that was inspirational called Shrapnel. It was very punk based, and
Yeah.
then we put one out called Personal Protest, and I would just more write creatively instead of verses. So I guess then I knew that I was more oriented toward language, words as art, and I studied it sort of as a minor, and eventually deciding on a major at San Francisco State after 3 or 4 other colleges down south. I was in film writing major and a minor in creative writing
Uh-huh.
at San Francisco State, and that then I took to the road as kind of a, I guess, a traditional sort of experience life, and then write about it
Yeah, so
thing.
you took a solo road trip all throughout Central South Mexico, Central South America on a motorcycle back in the day. I'm sure that inspired a lot for you.
Yeah, I mean, it started with the circle around the United States.
Okay.
Right the day after I graduated, basically. Uh, Took the same motorcycle that went on 3 or 4 long, open-ended uh, journeys, and I guess if I wanted to want to say that I felt myself as a poet, I guess that would be then, because it was kind of the first time I was really feeling alive
Mm,
and free in my spirit. So, and then the details along the way, the concretes. I was kind of following Leaves of Grass and Walt Whitman,
yes.
The Open Road, and certain like pages would pour out, poems, small short poems, usually short, would come out, and yeah, I guess that's where poetry really became my main thing. And I'd also say that I started to study after those trips
Mhm.
uh, with the folks from Naropa Institute.
Yep.
I went to a conference in a place that you and I were just at recently, and you
Yes.
have led many retreats there in
Mhm.
Pátzcuaro, Michoacan, pretty much central Mexico. I did that in year 2000. Went to a conference called Luminous Details, led by Ann Waldman and her partner Andrew Schelling at the time, and also a lady from Linus, which is just down the road from here, Joanne Kiger, and her partner Donald Gurewitch. They actually invited me to come have tea where we just did that retreat at Casa Huerma.
Yes.
And anyways, yeah, just really felt a lot of inspiration on that trip. It was not only uh, the time in getting uh, education from them, it was also the travel to get down there. Was It's just my sweet spot is hitting the road, and just to make it down there and feel like I was part of it right away.
Yeah, I think that's something that you and I really share, this kind of love of travel and visiting new places and just kind of immersing ourselves and allowing ourselves to be inspired, whether that's with poetry or photography or whatever it might be. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Movement.
Movement. Yes. Yes,
That's
definitely.
the rhythm of whatever you're trying to create, right?
Mhm. For
And
sure.
this conference was, at Naropa, was kind of led by Allen Ginsberg, and his secretary was there at that one, uh, in back in Connecticut, I think, and then also in Boulder. But there were great poets from all over the United States, and it was a lot about trusting your mind and Ginsberg's phrase, mind is shapely, art is shapely, as well as, the lineage as Pound. He said, the natural object is always the adequate symbol. And also he said the direct treatment of the thing or object kind of breaks away demystifies the ability to get started with poetry.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, sometimes my writing is complex and or complicated and dense and thick and unclear, but uh, sometimes it's just a simple short poem just uh, lays itself right out there for you, and the metaphor's
Yes.
right there. There's no real straining, and the act of putting it down, as this statement, you know, uh, suggests, is it's trusting the natural ability of your self in the act of putting it down, that
Yes.
it'll bring out what's needed. You know.
Yes, definitely. So speaking of that, that feels like a good segue. Do you have any of those type of kind of short poems that you wanted to share today?
Yeah, I have a few, have some of those, but I think one that sort of resonated with other people, and I put it in my book, Shorelines. It's called Residence, and it got published in the Inverness Almanac
Great.
after many tries with more complex poetry.
Right.
Residence. I have lived over the sea, in the forest, by the creek. And if you asked me which was my favorite, I would tell you that depends on the moment and whether I've paved the path feeling free.
Hmm, beautiful.
So sometimes some aphoristic, short piece will come along, and
Mhm.
it seems to be preferred a lot of
Yeah.
times
In some
by,
ways, it's easier to take in on some level. Yeah. But,
yeah,
there's such a sense of presence, and you speak of freedom, of, paving the path of freedom, and also, you mentioned kind of the poetry lineage, but also I know that, the folks at Naropa and Allen Ginsberg were also deeply influenced by the Buddhist teachings, of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, and again, this emphasis on both direct experience, as you mentioned, and how do we communicate a direct experience like that, and again, trusting ourselves that, if we're kind of sincere about it, that something will come through, right?
yeah, exactly. And I think I've gone through phases. That phase was more of trusting the first draft.
Uh-huh.
As Chogyam Trungpa said, first thought, best thought.
Yes.
So he said writing is writing the mind
Mhm.
in the presence of the moment. Yeah, just putting down what you're experiencing, and then so not going back later, and doctoring it or fiddling around with it. But so some of that still holds. But I've also seen how revision is essential
Yes.
as well, and just accepting myself as well as not be necessarily crystal clear or diamond clear at times with my first draft,
Mhm.
but trusting that the object is there, the essence of something, skeleton of something's there, and then usually the themes or lines, phrases, whatever the language will uh, stay with me in that period, and then I'll urging me to create. It's create it the poem. It's
Yes.
the poem. The poem leads the way, I believe.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So sometimes maybe there's an image or a particular turn of phrase that sort of keeps calling to you in a way.
Yeah, urging or a kernel
Yeah.
that will get things started. I feel like poems can be like clouds. They start with the necessity of a grain,
Mm.
uh, some a grist to you know grow, and
Yes.
grow into whatever shapes they want. But that grain is the content, and the form is secondary, in my view.
Mhm.
Process of letting that thing emerge and form itself.
Yeah. And that's sort of the magic of poetry in a way. I think, this ability to express something that again with that felt sense that both the poet feels it and the ideally the reader or the audience can experience it as well. That's sometimes more difficult to capture in prose or in ordinary language, but the language of poetry kind of brings it alive, that experience.
Yes.
Yeah. So, do you
Yeah.
have another poem you'd like to share on that sort of note?
Yeah. This one that came to me from a qigong class I was in. That particular day was pretty incredible. Heaven and earth sent, the deftest mesh pulses lightly in the morning breeze. Such layers of lacy dew and silk leave the impression of a soft, shivering silver chain, receiving rising sun's brushstrokes of iridescence in waves sweeping across web, warm air washing along grassy slope across creek waters. Today, even the Qigong teacher's Tingsha bells leave the faintest, innermost touch, like distant brown creeper song, eternal song catcher necklace, fields and broadcast creations, no traits left of authorship.
Yeah, beautiful. I feel it just really takes us into the moment. And I know you've spoken about this Qigong class that you take in the mornings, and I felt transported like I was just right there in kind of that ordinary magic of the morning. And yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
That that venue, that practice I started, I'd say 7 years ago or so, um, and it really is a poetic thing.
Mhm.
There are names for different moves, and the Tai Chi set that I practiced from there has a lot of names, and uh, so yeah, I've written uh, a bunch now of those qigong poems, I guess I'd call them.
Beautiful.
I have another one if you'd like.
Please, yeah, and just for those who don't know, maybe who aren't familiar, qigong is a very meditative, kind of slow style of movement practice that comes out of the Chinese tradition. So it's got elements of sort of Taoism and Buddhism in it. So it's also very connected to nature, and a lot of the movements allude to nature and natural forms as well.
Yeah, well put. This is called Crossing Bridge. Grouchy great blue heron on opposite creek bank in gray morning drowsiness as our human circle gathers, avoiding eye contact, ruffling of feathers, the early shade, bodies cool and huddled as we slowly warm up fluids, open joints, expand wings into the larger world. Walk, slow, stalking walk, modeled by great blue, heart thawing open along worn wooden planks of a willow watercourse that speaks to a wider creek. Tall, skinny legs, lubricated knees, head up, back straight, slightly lilted gait, alternating feet feel air like small tentacle eyes, toe prongs grip crossboards, grounding within each, yin yang balance, step by step, flow with all life. To stand on arrival at the other shore, face up, arms open, to drink in the wider scene, hawks and vultures circling, followed by swallows, shore lined by tule reed, soaking in the sun, rising from the southeast. Take a cue from fishing great blue, warriors standing, slightly swaying, staying centered, holding own ground, patiently waiting for the feast full presence.
Beautiful. I love that. And it's interesting because as I was listening to the poem, you kind of set the scene of there's the heron and there's the group practicing qigong, but then as the poem continues, we sort of lose track of who is who and what is what. Are we the heron? Are we the person doing the qigong? It all kind of blends together in this beautiful way.
Thank you. Yeah, that's, I guess, the aim. Um, yeah, to feel whole
And connected.
and connected. Connected is a key. Yeah,
Yeah.
is
Beautiful.
in relationship to everything else.
Mhm.
In well, as I mentioned earlier, of everything. You know, not an isolated observer or a scientific objective outside observer,
Mhm.
but
Yeah,
yeah, hopefully in a visceral oneness with everything.
definitely, definitely. And I know that your father was a naturalist and a falconer specifically. You've spoken about him quite a bit. Do you feel like perhaps some of your poetic sensibility is connected to his love of nature and birds, falcons specifically?
Yeah, I've written a lot of poems with birds in them. And if you'll indulge me, I'll just read a quote from a naturalist writer
Please,
uh,
yeah.
who I don't, subscribe to all of this statement, but we can explore it anyways.
Sure.
He says in a poetic prose piece, poets speak not in metaphor as we are taught to say, but that in moments of excitement, when we revert to primitive conditions of mind, the earth and all nature is alive and intelligent and feels as we feel. That resonated a lot for me. If feeling that feeling, it's a visceral, somatic feeling of oneness with things. And in terms of my father, the excitement part of it,
Yeah.
he would always stop everything. Look, a peregrine. He's a peregrine specialist and advocator and field researcher, field biologist, who kind of instilled the reverence for peregrine falcons,
Yeah.
and they have come along in poems and even dreams.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. But yeah, it makes me think about that sense of stirring. Like I remember the hike that we took out at Point Reyes at the national seashore, and just the power of that landscape, right? The surf rolling in and the cliffs, and then the different birds and hawks kind of playing in the wind, and the elephant seals that we got to see, which was amazing. And just that sense of almost being kind of like awestruck, or, sort of wakened out of your sort of everyday way of being, right? And the joy of connecting with other living beings in that way, and sort of, you feeling like you're in their habitat, part of their world almost.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, he definitely did instill that in me, that sense of awe and wonder and excitement and invigoration with the power, the real power that's out there.
Yeah,
Many
beautiful.
outings with him.
Yes, I can imagine that had a big influence. I think same thing with my mom. She was quite a naturalist also, and I think it inspired a love and appreciation of nature. How could it otherwise? Even though sometimes I resented it when I was a kid, but later come to appreciate, right? Some of these outings,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, definitely true.
Yeah.
When I'll admit he is kind of dominant sort of person and uh, know it all, I guess,
Yeah.
in some sense.
Yeah.
But he did, like, yeah, he did instill that. Uh, at one time, I remember saying, like, always wanting to push back against him
Uh-huh.
and and you know reduce his take on, say, identifying birds.
Mhm.
But like when I look back in retrospect, he once said, well, that's at least it's a start.
Yeah.
Identifying not everything or counting them, or it's not everything. I w- I was more like, oh, I want to really just experience some
Mm.
full beauty, but was pointing that out as well, and I don't want to let that go by without speaking. That
Yeah.
it's just the rebellion of the child.
Of course. Of course. It's inevitable, right, on some level. Um, I do wanna mention, I mentioned this in the introduction, but you were recently, featured in the Haight Ashbury Literary Journal. I have a copy here. Let's see if I can get it on the camera. So congratulations on that, and you were kinda featured in the center spread, kind of, up front and personal, so congratulations on that. I know you did a podcast, sharing about some of those poems, so that's
Yeah.
exciting.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah. They're going to do a reading in San Francisco, the eve of Independence Day,
Okay, great.
July 3rd at Bird and Beckett Books.
Okay, good. We'll be sure and put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Great. Great. Beautiful. So people might be able to find a copy of that, or I believe it's also available online, I think I saw, right? People can find that those works
Yes.
and with the journal.
Yes.
Great.
Their issues can be bought online.
Okay.
At Haight
Perfect.
Ashbury Literary Journal.
Great. Good. Any other poems you'd like to share at this point?
Well, it was mentioned um, dreams, how
Yes.
they influence creations. In my
Yes, I
case,
recently did an episode with
words.
a friend of mine here, Linus Streckfus, about kind of dreams and creativity and how dream images can figure into our creative work. So you've experienced that as well, I understand.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Either it's the dream itself is a poem in itself,
Mm-hmm.
just the act of writing it down in the morning. I mean, I've kept a journal for 30 some odd years, from when was in college, had a dream journal. But only in the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years have I really mined it for
Okay.
literature, for
Y-
poetry.
yes. Yeah.
Um, I have a couple. One is more of a prose poem
Sure.
from way back in the millennium, that
Okay.
just before, just before, yeah, kind of will show my evolution, I suppose. Just before joining that conference down in Pottsboro,
Uh-huh.
year 2000, called Eve of Millennium Dream. Here, unconscious on sandy floor of remote Baja Desert Canyon, caravan of couple dozen campers strewn along a wash in wait of tonight's millennium party, I find myself lost in the reverie of my own aloneness, sweet aloneness, over the city of angels floating. So many people packed together in boxes, so close, yet closed off from each other, doors shut in a city of steeples and antiquity, old downtown Los Angeles or Oakland, as I fly over, musing upon this oddity of living, versing on being alone amidst so much cut off company over lonely gray buildings, grooving along in a rhythm reminiscent of beat poetry that burns deeply within the layering of words, one after another, with the music of momentum bringing me to momentary awareness of the multitudes as they sleep. I fuse into flying Jack Kerouac in cities, with sweeping statements alive with excitement yet aloof and wistful. I find myself reaching in this morning recall for the right words to flow in a line. The one that comes out is capture in capital letters to fit in with this puzzle of sound and vision. Even here, I can feel the fear of the metropolis wash subtly like a breeze through these narrow rocky canyons where we've been for 5 days, as we wait tonight for the turning of another 1,000 years for something new to happen.
Beautiful.
So I saw the word capture,
Uh-huh.
capital letter, in the dream.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes words will come in dreams, right?
Yeah.
And not always come into a poem, but recently I heard the phrase muse betterment. I don't know how to actually work on. I'm working on how to work on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
You actually gave me an inspiration when I was there, the last gasp of the ass. I haven't used it in anything yet, but it's such a good one. But yeah, sometimes these things come and we don't necessarily know, like, they're sort of come bubbling up from the dream world, the unconscious. We don't know exactly what they mean, but we sort of find our way into it. In that poem you just shared, I really felt that tension, I guess, or that juxtaposition between that sense of isolation of living in an urban area, or almost like flying above an urban area and seeing all the people in their separate little boxes, and then being out at this festival or celebration, whatever it was, and kind of again that
Thanks.
yeah.
I felt like I was actually embodying Jack Kerouac.
Love
He
it.
was so influential for me.
Mhm.
All the motorcycle journeys,
Sure.
and then to meet up with Anne just days later, Anne Waldman down at Naropa's or Casawerma
Yeah.
and Pátzcuaro. I was dreaming with Allen Ginsberg and Joanne Kiger, even Anne. I mean, there was a period where they would come up in dreams a lot. But then I guess the last couple decades I've tried to stay rooted, I guess,
Mhm.
or more of a stay in place poetry, like getting to know
Sure.
natural surroundings and being more embodied.
Yes.
They were called School of Disembodied Poetics.
Yes. Right. Right.
So I took that overly literally.
Uh-huh.
But I guess what I'm saying is that just later in life, finding like my body grounded, my mind was off gallivanting around and whimsy, but that's been a journey to ground back in the body.
Yeah, there's something to be said for grounding deeply in a place, and becoming so intimately familiar with a particular place and landscape, and connecting on that deep level.
Yeah, and I think Gary Snyder would be the biggest influence in that sense.
Yes, yes, definitely.
He also had his period of travel and settling so deeply in San Juan Ridge.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Yeah,
I have
beautiful.
one dream that I would be remiss in not
Please.
a, a dream poem, and we can relate to it afterwards.
Sure.
Simply, nap coming out of reading novel set during the electrification of Ireland. Wind whips the sheet, shading me from scorching sun. I drift in and out of consciousness, flips the switch. And reading the book This Is Happiness by Neil Williams. Uh, and yeah, just harkening back to time we had,
Mhm.
just laying on my deck reading that novel and then dozed off. And those are the moments where the subconscious and conscious mind meet, right? And uh, creativity is most fertile.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, when we're relaxed, when we're falling into sleep or just coming out of sleep, that can be a very potent time. Yeah. Kind of a
Yeah.
delicious time too.
Yeah. I don't know if you get a lot of songs that way or
Yeah, I have been. As I mentioned in this prior podcast episode that that's where I've been receiving most of um my inspiration for song ideas is in the time either before, during, or just after sleep. So then the key is to actually record them in some way, on the voice memo on the phone or write down some lyrics and then as you have described with some of your poetry, then kind of working it and developing it and shaping it after that initial inspiration.
yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the time is flying by as it often does. I want to also mention, you have worked as a poet in the schools in California and with a program called Poetry Inside Out. And I'm curious when you work with students on poetry, and maybe this could lead actually into our pro tip, which I try to end each episode with a little pro tip, something people can try on their own. But what's something that has worked well for you when working with students and kind of introducing them to poetry and poetry writing, just to kind of get ideas flowing?
What comes to mind is an activity that really worked well with younger grammar school kids.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of walks in the woods or on trails and noticing things with the senses,
Yes.
using all the senses, but mainly vision and sound
Mm-hmm.
are what come. And instead of like, as I mentioned earlier about identification and making an error
Right.
and castigating yourself, I turned those into what I call beautiful mistakes.
Mm, love
So
that.
if I had the privilege of walking with the kids to a outside space or to the garden, I did that once at the West Marin School. It just comes out automatically. So every kid, will have uh, some kind of a metaphor, a simile made. I mean, we come out of our mothers s- saying that looks like or we look at the younger sibling
Mm-hmm.
in our mother's arms. It's like it looks like a hot dog, or we want to say what things are like.
Yeah, we make that's how we kind of learn is like comparing unknown things to things that we know, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that process of putting down as many beautiful mistakes as can, uh, what you see, uh, right away it'll become apparent. Very many of them. I guess sound is one of the most inspiring senses. Oh, what would be a good one for me right now? it, I'd say you would say the thing that you thought it was,
Uh-huh.
and then for um, so the cackling preschool teacher across the slope for gobbling turkeys up the hill.
Nice.
There's sounds that like make you think of one thing first,
Mhm.
and then another like growling of the stomach for mooing cow.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Beautiful. I love that.
Once it just facilitates itself and the kids get going, or any age, actually.
Yeah, and it's fun and playful and kind of humorous as well.
Yeah, so I encourage anyone, if they are stuck on what to write about, just walk outside, or start with what you're sensing, and then, oh, well, that sounds like that, and maybe it'll re-register, and no, it's not that, but I can make a little beautiful two-line poem,
Yeah,
a beautiful mistake.
a beautiful mistake. I like that reframe. Well, Brian, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I so appreciate it. And if people want to learn more about you and your work and what you're up to, what's a good way for them to find you?
I've never really got the handle on the, the promotion
Yeah,
at all.
yeah,
I mean, I suppose you could Google me and find podcasts and
yes,
certain readings, a
yeah.
television show that happened in the Marin County Library system. That's another stage of
Yeah,
development.
right. I know. It's something that we creatives often struggle with. Like, how do we, first we make our work and then how do we try to get it out there into the world? So,
I did
yeah.
radio shows for 17 years,
Yeah.
presenting other people's work.
Uh-huh.
Now I will, get on um, a show in town. We have a wonderful public radio station here in Point Reyes Station,
Great.
and every once in a while do a poetry show. Uh, but I suppose give my email out.
Sure. I'll share some links in the show notes as well.
As I do think I have archives of things.
Definitely.
And my book is called Shorelines. The Traveler Comes Home to the Tide Zone.
Yes, and that's available online as well. Yeah.
It's running out.
That's running out. Ooh, maybe
It's
time
more
to publish some more, huh?
personal
Yeah.
request.
All right. Okay. So people should get in touch with you directly for that.
And hopefully a couple more projects will come out into the world not too long from now. But
Beautiful.
thank you, Melinda, so much.
Absolutely.
This,
It's my pleasure. Yeah.
and thanks for your inspiration along our journey of our friendship.
Of course. May it continue. Yeah. Thank you so much. Find and connect with us on YouTube and social media under Syncreate. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe and leave us a review. And again, we'd love to hear from you, so reach out to us anytime at info@syncreate.org. Love to hear your thoughts on the show, possible guests, and topics, so drop us a line. We're recording today at Record ATX Studios in Austin, with Brian joining us from Northern California. The podcast is produced in collaboration with Mike Osborne at 14th Street Studios. Thanks so much for being with us, and see you next time.